All right, let's jump into this, shall we? Today, we are going deep into the world of media distribution.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a wild gold rush out there, you know?
Hmm.
Everyone's fighting for eyeballs, engagement, trying to make sure their content gets seen.
Right.
Streaming services are popping up left and right, content's everywhere.
Everywhere you look.
But for the creators, the folks actually making this stuff, turning those views into, well, actual money, it's getting tougher and tougher.
Oh, sure.
And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Okay.
We've got this awesome article from Galen, a consulting firm, super sharp, really know their stuff when it comes to media and tech.
I've heard of them, yeah.
They lay out why this whole media landscape is both incredibly exciting, but also kind of terrifying. So our mission, if you will, is to figure out how you, as a storyteller, can not just survive, but actually thrive in this crazy new world.
Sounds like a plan.
So what are some of the big takeaways from this article? What really stood out to you?
Well, right off the bat, they talk about this platform overload that creators are facing. And it's a real thing. I mean, just imagine
Oh, I can only imagine.
having to tailor your film, your show, whatever you create for a dozen different streaming services.
Ugh. Yeah.
Each one wants different specs, different regulations. I mean, it's enough to make your head spin.
It's like a giant multi-dimensional jigsaw puzzle
Exactly.
just to get your work out there, you know?
It's mind-boggling. And then on top of that, you've got
Oh,
all the nitty-gritty technical stuff. The article really digs into this. Resolution, codecs, subtitles, how to integrate ads. It's a minefield.
yeah, I bet.
Think about it. You might have to re-edit your film just slightly,
Yeah.
for Netflix,
Okay.
then do it again for Amazon, and then again for some European broadcaster, all with different rules, different ways of doing things.
It's like the creative process never ends.
Then they gave this one example, this filmmaker, I don't remember their name, but
No worries.
they had to tweak the edit just to fit different ad break rules, depending on the platform. Wild, right?
Absolutely. So on top of the technical hurdles, you're saying there's this constant pressure to adapt, to change things up.
Yeah, and it's not just about the artistic vision anymore. It's logistics. It's a nightmare.
Right. So even if you manage to, like, conquer all that, jump through all the hoops, get your work out there, there's this other monster lurking, right?
Oh, absolutely. And the article calls it content saturation, which basically means, there's just so much content out there.
Oh, tell me about it.
All vying for attention, fighting for those eyeballs. And it means that even really high-quality work can get lost in the noise.
Oh,
It's tough.
it's like trying to shout over a stadium full of people. How do you even make your voice heard?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where this idea of discoverability comes in, which the article talks about.
Discoverability, okay.
It's not enough to just create great content anymore.
Right.
You have to be strategic. You have to make sure people can actually find your work.
Gotcha. So how do you do that? What's the secret sauce?
Well, targeted marketing, for one.
Yeah.
And SEO. Making sure your work pops up when people are searching for specific things. And this is important for everybody, by the way.
What do you mean?
It's not just for big studios with big budgets.
Okay.
Even if you're just, creating and sharing stuff online, this matters. How do you make your work stand out in that endless scroll?
That's a really good question.
What makes you different? You have to think about these things.
Right. So we've got technical hurdles. We've got a super crowded marketplace. Sounds pretty daunting so far. But the article also talks about how Europe is adding a whole other layer to this story.
Oh, for sure.
These regulations designed to boost local content.
Right. Because you've got these big U.S. streaming giants kind of dominating the scene, and European countries, they're trying to hold their own. It's complicated.
I bet.
You see things like levies on those international platforms, basically taxes.
Oh, okay.
And that money, it goes back into supporting local filmmaking, which is great.
Makes sense.
But there are also rules about how much European content has to be available on these platforms.
Yeah.
It's a whole other set of rules for creators to navigate.
So are these rules like a good thing? I mean, are they protecting European culture or are they just making things harder for everyone?
Well, the article does a good job of presenting both sides of that argument.
Oh, that's interesting.
Some people say these rules are absolutely necessary
Okay.
to prevent, a handful of global players from just taking over everything.
Right.
It's about preserving diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have other folks saying, yeah, hold on a second.
Yeah.
These regulations, they might actually hinder investment
I could see that.
and limit creative freedom.
Interesting.
So, yeah, Valid points on both sides, for sure.
It sounds like a real balancing act.
Absolutely.
Protecting local voices, but also not stifling innovation, collaboration. Not easy.
Nope.
But even with all these challenges, all this doom and gloom, there are some glimmers of hope in the article, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not all bad news.
What are some of those bright spots?
Well, and this might sound surprising, but some of the most interesting opportunities are coming from those very same U.S. streaming giants.
Wait, really? So Netflix, Amazon, they're part of the solution?
In a way, yeah. They're investing, like, heavily in European productions.
Uh-huh.
And that's creating more work for local talent, both in front of the camera and behind it.
That's pretty cool.
Now, of course, you can debate whether this is truly beneficial for European storytelling or just another form of, cultural influence.
Right.
But it's definitely an opportunity, even if it's a complex one.
Yeah, it seems like complexity is the name of the game in this whole media landscape.
For sure.
So it's kind of like they're playing both sides, right? A little bit. But I guess that seems to be a running theme here.
It does, doesn't it?
This whole media world is full of complexity contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
So what other opportunities did the article point out? Anything else that stood out to you?
Well, partnerships are becoming a big deal,
Oh, interesting.
especially among public broadcasters.
Mm.
They're realizing, hey, if we team up, we can pool resources, make bigger, more ambitious projects,
Right.
stuff that can compete globally.
That's like that saying, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing about super domestic content.
You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, I'm still not quite sure what that means. It sounds like, I don't know, superheroes doing laundry or something.
Uh-huh. No. Not quite. Super domestic, it means stories that are like really rooted in a specific culture or region.
Okay.
Shows that resonate with a particular audience because of their language, their humor, the cultural references.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like a counter movement to this idea of globalized content,
Yeah.
everything being the same.
So instead of trying to appeal to everyone, you're laser focused on a niche.
Right.
Like that bakery down the street that only makes one kind of bread. But it's the best bread you've ever tasted.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
And it goes back to that whole standing out thing we talked about.
Right.
By focusing on that unique niche content, creators can find a dedicated audience, people who are craving those specific stories.
It's about authenticity,
Yeah.
connection.
Exactly.
So it seems like knowing your audience, what they're into, what their needs are, their culture, that's more important than ever.
Absolutely. You can't just throw something out there and hope it sticks.
Nope. You got to know who you're talking to.
Right. And speaking of knowing, the article's last piece of advice is all about finding the right distribution partner.
Okay, so we've got this wild west of a media world, right? You got to be tech savvy, marketing minded, culturally aware, and now you need to find the right partner to guide you through it all.
Pretty much.
Sound like a lot. So how do you even begin to choose? I mean, there's so many options out there.
You got to do your homework, that's for sure. The article really stresses this. Find a partner who gets the technical side of things.
Like those codex formats we talked about earlier?
Yep, all that.
Yeah.
But also someone who's got good relationships with the different platforms.
So they know how to get your content seen.
Basically, yeah. But it goes beyond just the technical stuff, though. There's a human element here, too.
Right, of course.
The biggest thing is they have to understand your content, your goals. It's not just about getting your film on Netflix.
It's about finding someone who gets your vision.
Yes, and who can help you navigate this whole crazy world strategically.
It's like finding a Sherpa to guide you up Mount Everest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just pick anyone for that.
Right. You need someone with experience.
Experience, expertise, a shared understanding of the journey.
And trust.
Oh, for sure.
You've mentioned transparency a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so crucial when you're choosing a partner?
Think about it. Your distribution partner, they're the bridge between you and your audience.
Right.
And they're often handling the money, too.
Oh, yeah.
You need to be able to trust them. They got to be upfront about how your content's performing, how much money it's making,
Yeah.
how that money's being shared.
So data, reporting, all that's got to be clear.
Non-negotiable, the article says.
So communication is key, like any good relationship.
Absolutely.
And trust. You got to feel like you're both rowing the boat in the same direction.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, coming back to our original question, how do storytellers not just survive, but thrive in this wild west of a media world?
Yeah,
I think this article gives us a pretty good roadmap.
it does, but it definitely sounds more like trekking through a jungle than walk in the park.
True. Exciting, unpredictable, and maybe a little dangerous,
Yeah, a little bit.
but also full of potential.
That's a good point.
Key is to be prepared, resourceful, and most importantly, passionate about what you're creating.
And maybe pack a good machete.
Oh, definitely.
Quite a jungle out there, that's for sure. But one thing that's been on my mind, the article focuses a lot on the challenges for creators, right? But what about the rest of us, the viewers, the listeners, the people, just trying to make sense of this whole media explosion?
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, they talk about how tough it is for creators to stand out, to connect with their audience,
Mm-hmm.
but all this fragmentation, all these choices,
Mm-hmm.
what does it mean for us as consumers?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, are we all just becoming more isolated, stuck in these little content
It's
bubbles?
like we're all in our own echo chambers.
Exactly. Just seeing and hearing things that reinforce what we already believe, what we already like. And that raises some big questions, doesn't it?
Like what?
Well, about media literacy, for one. How do we teach people to think critically about what they're consuming?
Right.
And what about shared cultural experiences? I
Mm.
mean, if we're all watching and listening to such different things, does that make it harder to connect?
To find common ground.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only going to get more intense. I was just reading this thing about how streaming services are using AI now to personalize not just what you watch, but how you watch it. They can tweak the pacing, the music, even the colors based on your preferences.
It's like, whoa, that's wild.
It is pretty mind-blowing.
So it's amazing, right? All this personalization. But it's also kind of creepy.
It is a little bit, yeah.
And it could lead to even more isolation, couldn't it?
Potentially, yeah.
So the article's great. It gives us this roadmap for creators. But I think it also challenges us, the viewers, the audience,
Oh, so?
to be more aware, more conscious of what we're consuming, how we're consuming it. We got to be more intentional,
You're absolutely right.
more discerning, more willing to step outside our comfort zones.
I like that. Stepping outside the comfort zone.
Because look, we have more choices than ever, which is fantastic,
Mhm.
but it also means we have more responsibility to make sure we're not just trapped in an echo chamber of our own making.
Well said. And having these conversations, asking these questions, that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely. So I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this media distribution landscape. It's a wild ride, that's for sure.
For sure.
We've covered a lot of ground today, all the challenges, the opportunities. Hopefully you've got a better sense of what's going on out there.
I hope so.
And for both creators and consumers, it's important to remember this landscape, it's constantly evolving.
It is. Always changing.
So stay curious, stay engaged, keep exploring, and maybe, just maybe, keep that machete handy.
You never know.
You never know what you might encounter in this wild world of media.